Thank you. My name is Mike Barto. I represent Lubriplate. I'm the district manager. I cover Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I want to thank IPS. I want to thank Bob for the invitation today to stand in front of you and help you understand Lubriplate. You have some catalogs. This is our master catalog. This has all of our products in it, the blue one. The yellow one that you have is all food grade. These are available. So you can call our plants, call our customer service. They would send, if you're calling on a food grade customer, you can ask for the food grade catalog. Or you could give them this catalog, which has food grade and industrial grade products in it, which is the blue one. The other card that I gave you is an interchange sheet. We'll talk about this as we go along here. The one side has compressor oils, which are synthetic, very expensive, okay? We make them, we compete with the OEMs of the compressor manufacturers, okay? If you have a customer, quickly, if you have a customer that's buying from Ingersoll Rand, and they're buying the Ingersoll Rand oil, you're going to be a lot less expensive than Ingersoll Rand. Now, a lot of times you're going to run into warranty issues and that type of thing. I always respect that. If the customer says, well, this is a brand new compressor, I want to, honor the warranty. I always respect that. If it's out of warranty, then you can get a sample of his oil, we can send it to our lab, we can show him it's identical, that type of thing. All right? The other side has some interchanges, Mobile, Kluber, a lot of the products you see out there today. Okay, we just quoted a customer a list of lubricants. And you call me up and say, geez, Mike, we're high. We're not getting anywhere. Well, what did that customer compare? You sent him a price. You faxed it to him. What did he have to compare? How did he make that evaluation?
Probably off one of the main brands.
But you sent him a price, and he had somebody else's price. What did he look at to make the determination that you're the price, right? Okay. What I want to talk about here initially are value-added services that are included with our price, that are very important today. Today's world, a lot of customers use synthetics. People like Dodge, Boston, Eurodrive, they manufacture gearboxes that go in conveyors, packing lines, manufacturing plants. They're filled with synthetic oils, very expensive oils. $40 a gallon, $50 a gallon, depending on the synthetic, okay? Now, let's talk about our price. We're not going to be the product that pops up when you put in SAE 30 weight or ISO 100 and all of a sudden you get a barrage of hydraulic oils or that type of thing. We're in business since 1870. We're in Newark, New Jersey. That's our corporate. We're still in the same building. We manufacture in Toledo. We distribute throughout the world through distributors like IPS, like Applied Industrial, like Motion Industries, Stuart Amos. There's a lot of distributors that we supply. So what I want to drive home this morning is what is in our price. If you're using an oil that costs $50 a gallon, do you think when it's time to dump that or change it, you might want to have it analyzed and see if you have to throw it away and buy new oil? A lot of customers do that today. And oil analysis can extend the life of that oil for a long time. Guys like me, we're leaving, we're retiring, okay? A lot of the old timers, they would dump it and put new in, all right? But new technology today, synthetic oils and oil analysis extend the life of that product, extend the equipment, reduce downtime, which reduces cost. Everybody understand that? Any questions? Our value-added services, page 3. Okay? This is what makes a difference with Lubriplate. We buy the best base oils that can be bought. We make our own greases. We blend our own oils. Now, we don't have tankers in the ocean. We're not ExxonMobil, okay? We buy some of our base oils from ExxonMobil. We buy from other oil companies too, okay? But we make a quality product, we're staying behind it. We have 2 product lines. Fisk Brothers owns Lubriplate. So we have Fisk products that started way back in the 1800s. We still have some of those. And then Lubriplate products, which we bought in the 1930s. Fisk Brothers bought Lubriplate. Our name means a lot, and we stand behind it. Technical support is one of the first things listed. So you're in a plant, and the guy says, get me some of this grease. And he gives you a tube, and it says, diamond, whatever. I don't know what it says on it, okay? You don't know what it is, right? But what you can do is you can call me if you have my phone number, if you can get me on the phone, or you can call a technical support line, call Lubriplate, and say, hey, this guy just gave you this mobile grease. What do you have that interchanges with that? Okay? And usually in your business, the early bird gets the worm, right? The guy gets back, the guy wants to get it off his desk, you get back with what he needs to buy and the cost. A lot of times you get the order. Same way with oils. Again, you're going to see a lot of different names out there. Klubersync, if you looked on that interchange sheet, I mean, and Kluber is made in Germany, and they ship it over here. A lot of equipment that comes from Germany, you'll find it in bottling plants, food plants, where they blow mold bottles, like the plastic bottle he has down there. That starts as a little capsule, and you probably all have seen them. And that's all German equipment. And they heat it up, put air in it, into a form, and all of a sudden you got a bottle. But a lot of that equipment indicates Kluber products. Now we can't interchange all Kluber, but we can interchange a lot of Kluber. Do you run into Kluber out there? Anybody run into that?
I've never had it.
Okay.
I've never particularly run into it, but I have a customer that does a lot of blow molds.
Okay.
Graham.
There you go. That's one of the things when I was talking to Bob last month. I want to try to help you re-energize Lubriplate here. I know when I first started with Lubriplate, I think we were more involved. We had some food plant customers, that type of thing, and I guess over time, things change. Price becomes more important depending on, the economy and that type of thing, and it gets tough. And look, it's no secret, you're not the biggest distributor we have, you're not the smallest, okay? And everything we do through distribution. We do not sell direct, okay? Now, if you look at our cost sheets, there's advantages in buying it by the tractor and trailer load, 40,000 pounds. There's an advantage to that. And you get a break on the price if you do that. All right, second item, surveys. All right, you have a customer that you have a great relationship. And look, I used to be in distribution. In York County, in Lancaster County, it's all about relationships. Because if you don't know the guy you're calling on, he's not going to buy from you. But once he gets to know you and he knows you're a good guy and you're coming back, he's going to give you a shot. In these 2 counties. You get out of here, you get down to Philly, it's a different story. But anyway, a survey. So you have a customer that you feel confident that he's going to buy from you. Okay? You bring me in, we talk to the customer, we get his commitment. Hey, you guys come in, help me out, survey my equipment, what do I need? I'll show you what I've got. Help me consolidate, help me reduce the inventory, help me cut down on my costs. We do that type of service. Now, we can do an extensive survey where we go in with a sheet and we go to we label the entire plant by department, by machine, by component, whether it's a gearbox, whether it's a bearing, whether it's a hydraulic system. We label all those things, okay? And then we'll talk about these later. We make tags for customers. We can color code the tags. And they can tag, an example, a compressor. You don't want to put the wrong oil in a compressor. So you want to make sure you got a tag on there that they get the right oil in there. But surveys is a big part of our business, okay? And that's another reason why our price might be a little bit higher. Now, not everybody takes advantage of these value-added services. But no, Mr. Customer, we're not going to lower our price. Our price is still going to be the same, okay?
Do they charge for the survey?
No, they're all no charge. Third item there, custom tagging, color-coded. This is a no-charge service. We make charts, laminated chart. You make one the size of the blackboard or the whiteboard there, if and that goes in maybe a maintenance, the lubrication room or something like that. And then we list it by application, general bearings, and we indicate a grease, gearboxes, right angle, and and then we color code each different item.
It's usually pretty hard to get a hold of somebody for these surveys. You guys do them pretty often.
Survey comes with a commitment. And here's what we don't want to do, you and I. You can talk to, depending who let's say you're talking to a purchasing agent, okay? Yeah, come on in, I want you to survey, all the equipment, all right? But then the plant manager or the CFO or somebody like this, whoa, I haven't seen any prices yet, we got to go through that entire process, before we walk the plant, do all the work, and then have the guy say, you know what, I can find somebody else that do it for less, Now, not everybody offers this. Mobile Exxon, they don't do surveys. Well, in fact, there's no mobile Exxon reps, okay? There are a lot of jobbers out there, people that sell just oil and grease. They don't offer the service either.
Is there something you can recommend in order to kind of get the ball rolling on that? Like, get a few items they use, get pricing from you on it, see how it compares, and they say
You can do that. You can do that. And look, I wanted to bring this up. That's a great question. If you go out, I started this out with, we just quoted a list of lubricants and we were high, okay? So you go out there and you get a guy all happy, hot and bothered about, yeah, come on in, I want you to, and he gives you this list and says, here, quote me all this. Now all of a sudden you're high compared to what he's buying. So he's going to say, forget him. Mm-hmm. So based on your position with this business, okay, you might not want to start that way with the list. Let's help the customer. Do you use grease, Mr. Customer? How many different greases do you use? I mean, you'd be surprised some of the cabinets, I see 10 different cartridges of grease. They've got a high temp for this application, a low temp for this application, a freezer, that type of thing. So don't just ask for the list, because when you send that back, what does he have to compare? Just the price. Just the price. That's perform. That's I used to call it need analysis. Ask them some questions.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is, like, I wouldn't want to go through that and then have you guys do the survey and then come back and it still comes down to the price.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. We need to qualify the customer. And look, there's been many cases where I've walked out with the distributor salesman. I said, look, this guy's not going to buy from us. We're going to do all that work. So, and maybe you take a different approach then. But let's not run out and get a whole bunch of lists coming in and then just send a guy a price. If you can problem solve, or if you find out this guy's got all kinds of different oils, You know, he uses a mobile product here, he uses Shell here, he uses Lubriplate there. I mean, this guy's all over the place. He's got buckets and drums and all over his company. We have software. After, let's say we do a survey, and there's a plant not far from here that operates 100% on Lubriplate, and they utilize our software. And I did that survey when I used to work for a distributor. And I'll tell you who it is. It's Armstrong World Industries. They use all Lubriplate. They use our oil analysis. They use our software. Our software has allowed them to buy out their lubrication. Now, when I say buy it out, they went to somebody else and bought the labor. Come on in, mechanics, we're gonna show you where to go. Here's your schedule for today, lubricate this. And they utilize our software. And all the software does, it runs on a Windows-based computer, desktop, and it automates the survey. Now, that's a survey where you can spend, in that case, months going through the plant. But you might have another customer, you might spend 2 days or a day going through the entire plant. You list every application, every greaser, every oil application. And then you apply it to the software, and then they can print out work orders, daily work orders.
So who do they buy their lubricate from?
Who's they? Armstrong.
Armstrong.
They buy it from,
Probably
oh, who, what customer, or distributor?
Yeah, it's the same
Motion Industries. Now, that's a contractual type customer. That's a national customer. And, well, their corporate's right here in Lancaster, okay? But every so many years, that's a bid type business. And I'm not, you know, we have to know what market we're in, right? Are we in that market in this room? Would you say?
I mean, Motion is such a large distributor for that. We're looking for some other smaller
There you
things
go.
we can go after. It's not.
There you go. And the reason I brought that up, and look, I'm not trying to give Motion's business away, and you could walk in there, and you're not gonna get it, okay? Because,
They get a better multiplier than we do, I'm sure.
well, they buy more, okay? And what I'm trying to say is, we need to know what market we need to call on, okay? We're not gonna walk into Armstrong, Kellogg's, you know, people like that. I mean, those people, they buy on a national basis, okay? East Coast to West Coast. And that's how they negotiate today. So, I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not putting you down at all. You still have your market, but know where it is. Know where it is.
You know, the thing is Motion gonna be going after the guys that we would be going after. Maybe
They might.
They might not think it's worth it.
But again, it's
For us, it could be.
relationship selling. It's relationship selling. It depends, you know, if you have a better relationship. And look, I used to fight that all the time too, you know. And you always get that newbie, that new guy, hey, go out calling all these guys. Well, then you go in and, hey, Mike, so-and-so was here the other day, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it happens.
Same with him, he's a character, I can tell you what.
Second to last item, big item, no charge oil analysis. We do not charge for that, but that is heavily used today with products that cost 40, 50 bucks a gallon. And that's why you use oil analysis. Now, there's still customers out there who use 90 weight gear oil and, you know, that type of thing. And we have those products. Last item, training. End user training. I'll do that with you. And look, God rest his soul, Kervin Weaver. I used to make a lot of calls with Kervin Weaver. And Kervin, and I used to he was the only guy that took me in the Amish country. And we were down there, you know, we'd spend a day down there. Who calls in Lebanon? Henry Molden.
That's big.
Not me.
Not you? Okay. They're in Lebanon, but they used to buy from IPS, high temp chain oil. And We still have that. I've tried to go, you know, as a factory rep, it's hard to make sales calls. Because unless, it's easy to walk in with you, you know, but for me to go in and, what do you want, you know? But if I can go in with a distributor, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. Okay, value-added services is part of our price. And I just wanted to drive that home. Okay? Go on the very back of the catalog. I'm the red guy, cover Pennsylvania, West Virginia. This catalog, the blue catalog, is more up to date. This is my new address. I just recently moved. The yellow catalog, the food grade, you're going to see I lived in Lidditz, but a different address. This is my current address. Again, I have business cards if anybody wants a business card. Open that back cover. Perma lubricators. Everybody familiar with those? We do not manufacture them, but they stock our oils among other manufacturers' oils and greases. And when a customer calls them, they can place an order through Perma and get Lubriplate, or they can place that same order through us, and then we place it with Lubriplate. They're based out of North Carolina. They're the largest manufacturer in the world of remote lubricators like this. They make them for Timken, FAG, SKF. So there's a lot of them out there. You'll see different brands all over the place. In a lot of cases, Perma makes them. This is another excellent product for today. Okay? The reason I'm saying that, it promotes safety number one. Safety number one, that's very important with most customers. Okay? With all customers. Okay? Time savings number two. Safety when a guy doesn't have to crawl over a moving piece of equipment, you know, and have a chance of getting caught. He doesn't have to shut it down, which they lose production. Okay, there's a cost in shutting equipment down. Did anybody ever sell any here? Perma? Okay. Yeah.
We might have sold a couple of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rob Rogers, he's a local Perma rep for Pennsylvania, and Cody Decker is his helper. But, you know, if I can help you, I will. I'm not an expert on the Perma, but we sell a lot of Permas, okay? But Rob is available to make calls with my distributors. He does that. He'll come make a call with you, and if you sell it or order it through Lubriplate, it has to be Lubriplate grease or oil. It cannot be mobile or anything like that. So that's how we drive funnel the business to us, by requiring it be our product. But another great product, you know, with right sizing, downsizing, whatever you want to call it, there's a lot of lube mechanics they're going. A lot of people run to fail, what they call run to fail. They buy a gearbox. They don't check that gearbox till it fails, depending on the cost. Now, if it's a larger gearbox, they don't run that way. Now they start oil analysis on that gearbox and that type of thing. Any questions? What am I doing on time here? Okay. I want to show you a 25-minute video, and it's basic information on oil and grease. It talks about ISO, okay? Everything you're going to see in the video is on our website. So don't, you know, and you can print it off, you can do whatever you want. But, and our customers, your customers, end users, have access to this on our website. They just click on it, put their name in, who it is, and they can view it. But this is good basic information, whether you're on the phone for IPS or you're talking to your customer on the road. It's good basic information that you can utilize. Okay, Bob, what do we hit here?
Down the bottom right next to the 66%.
Down? Oh, okay.
Right to the left there, up a little bit. Left.
Oh,
Your other left. There you go. The one that, right, 2 spaces. Right. There you go.
right there.
Welcome to the Lubriplate Lubricants Online Training Program. I'm David Ray, the Director of Field Engineering and Certified Lubrication Specialist for Lubriplate. This course is designed to give you a brief review of some lubrication basics. Please keep in mind that the following program is for general lubrication training, and that a trained lubrication professional or company should be contacted prior to making any change in your lubrication program. When we think of a lubricant, the most common use is to prevent metal-to-metal contact in bearings or between gears. But there are other uses for a lubricant, such as transmitting power in the case of hydraulics, carrying away heat, providing a seal, or preventing corrosion, just to name a few. But on the most basic level, we want to make sure we keep moving parts separated with a full film of lubricant. One of the most important aspects of a lubricant is the viscosity of the lubricant. While viscosity is technically the resistance to flow, we can think of it in terms of high viscosity and low viscosity. A high viscosity oil is very thick and difficult to pour, while a low viscosity oil is very light and pours very easily. It is important to remember that viscosity in itself is not a measure of how good or bad an oil will perform, but simply a measure of how thick or how thin the oil is at a given temperature. Viscosity also changes when the temperature changes. As an oil heats up, it thins out. As an oil cools down, it thickens up. A standard hydraulic oil of above average quality will be about half of its original viscosity if you heat it up 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The opposite is also true. If you cool down the same oil by 30 degrees, it will be almost twice as heavy or viscous. How much the viscosity of an oil changes with the change in temperature is linked to the viscosity index. You can use chemicals to mitigate the effects of temperature on an oil's viscosity, and synthetic oils are naturally much more resistant to changes in viscosity, making them ideal for outdoor use. There are 2 main systems for measuring an oil's viscosity. The first is kinematic viscosity, which is measured in centistokes, or CST. Centistokes are the main unit of measurement in the ISO classification system. The second method we use is Sable Universal Seconds. These are usually shown as being the SUS of an oil. Keep in mind what we discussed earlier, that viscosity is not a measure of quality, simply how heavy an oil is. Just because an oil is heavier does not mean that it is better. These designations are used by different organizations to come up with charts and classification systems for lubricants. The most common ones you are probably familiar with, like SAE or AGMA. These designations can be found in machinery manuals almost anywhere. One of the newer classification systems is the ISO, or International Standards Organization. Their classification system will begin with ISO and is frequently followed by a series of numbers. You need to be careful to differentiate between which classification system you are using, because mixing them up can get to be an expensive mistake. While most machinery manufacturers have gone to the newer ISO classification system, it is possible to confuse it with SAE. For example, I knew of someone who ran out of an SAE 140 weight gear oil and in a hurry and not knowing any better, replaced it with an ISO 150 gear oil, thinking that a difference of 10 couldn't make that big of a difference. In reality, as you'll see on the next slide, the oil the gearbox needed, the 140 weight gear oil, is actually anywhere from 2 to 4 times heavier than the ISO 150. That was a very costly mistake that is easy to make. This chart illustrates the different viscosity classification systems and how to interchange between them all. You can see the Cena-Stokes, or CST, on the left-hand side, as well as the Savolt Universal Seconds, or SUS, on the right-hand side. These are physical measurements of an oil's viscosity. The colored bars in the middle are the ranges an oil needs to be in to classify as that viscosity grade of oil. You can also see how wide the range is for a 90 or 140 weight gear oil in the SAE classification system, as well as how the ISO has attempted to narrow down the viscosity ranges somewhat. For example, there are no fewer than 3 ISO viscosity grades, ISO 150, ISO 220, and ISO 320, that can all be correctly called a 90 weight gear oil. This can be important if your gearbox is going to be located in a freezer or next to an oven, for example. If you ever need to interchange between these classification systems, all you need to do is draw a horizontal line through this chart, starting with whatever numbers you do know. Anything that that line intersects can be called a rough equivalent viscosity-wise.
Page 25 of your catalog got charges.
This next chart shows some common viscosity recommendations for machinery using the ISO viscosity grades. Please remember that this is intended as a guide, and that there are times when you may want to use a different viscosity other than the ones listed here. That's some basic information on oils. Let's move on to greases. Why did we discuss oils first? Because a standard cartridge of grease is actually 80 to 95% oil. Most people would guess about half or maybe 2/3, but it is in actuality almost completely oil, specially blended and reacted with a thickener, as well as other chemical additives. When we say thickener, that is usually referred to as the type of grease. Different grease types that you're probably familiar with are things like lithium, lithium complex, aluminum complex, and polyurea. Different grease types can impart performance advantages to greases, such as high temperature usage in the case of complex greases or calcium sulfonates, or water resistance. Like oils, greases have their own classification system. The NLGI, or National Lubricating Grease Institute, has developed a system for classifying greases based on their consistency. Like viscosity, this system does not indicate the quality of a grease, merely how thick or how thin it is. This test is performed by dropping a weighted cone into a sample of grease and measuring how far in it sinks. Depending on how far in it sinks, it falls into a classification system ranked from 00 to 0 and then from 1 through 6. The larger the number, the harder the grease. A 00 grease will pour under its own weight, while a number 6 grease is actually a solid block of grease. While you might use a 00 grade of grease in a leaky gearbox, or a 0 grade in an automatic lubrication system, the most common grades of grease are the NLGI grades 1 and 2. These are the most common grease you'll find in cartridges, and if you ever see a grease with a single digit number after its name, that is most likely the NLGI grade of the grease. Some examples would be Synextreme FG1 or 1200-2. Other numbers that are not single digits may indicate the ISO base oil viscosity of the grease. Another specification of grease is what is known as a grease's dropping point. This is the temperature at which the gel structure between the thickener and the base oil breaks down and the grease completely falls apart. You cannot use a grease at its dropping point. It will cause catastrophic damage to your machinery. You will want to make sure that you select a grease that has a dropping point at least 150 degrees Fahrenheit above your application's temperature. You may be able to use a synthetic product much closer to the dropping point, perhaps 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but either way, as you get closer to the dropping point, more frequent lubrication becomes necessary. And when I say that a grease is synthetic, it is because it has a synthetic base oil in it. Something else to consider is that we can make a grease using any base oil viscosity we want. Using the acronym LETS, which stands for Load, Environment, Temperature, and Speed, we can design greases with heavier base oils for higher temperatures or more heavily loaded applications. Or we can make a grease with a lighter weight base oil for colder weather or higher speed applications. Keep in mind that as the speed of an application goes up, that generally the base oil viscosity of a grease will go down. Greases can also be dyed different colors. Many times this is an attempt at marketing or having a customer associate a certain color with an application. Red greases, for example, are often associated with high temperature applications, even though it may not actually be a grease suitable for high temperatures. In most cases, the color of a grease does not affect its performance. In some cases, you may have black or off-green greases that contain moly or graphite for extreme pressure additives. Different colors may also be a way for a lubricant manufacturer to identify their products. I'm sure you've all heard about grease compatibility. Grease compatibility is what happens, or doesn't happen, when you mix two greases with different kinds of thickeners together. If you mix two samples of grease together and the consistency does not change significantly, then they could be considered compatible. If the mixture does change significantly, then the greases are said to be incompatible. Most often, if two greases are incompatible, then you will see a significant amount of softening. Usually, you want to try to avoid mixing greases together by cleaning as much of the old grease out or off of the application as possible. If this is not practical, and it usually isn't, you can come back and re-grease more frequently using a bit less grease than normal in order to get the new lubricant established. Keep in mind that if you have higher temperatures, any incompatibility issues could be more obvious. This next chart gives you a general idea of which grease types are compatible and which ones aren't. Find the thickener type from the first grease on the top horizontal axis and the second type along the vertical side axis. Where the two intersect, you can see that mixing two types of grease that results in a red or a yellow box may not be a great idea. You may still be able to do it, but I would suggest consulting with an expert first. Generally, a green box means the two greases are compatible, and you should not experience any real problems. Keep in mind that this chart is just a general reference tool and may not apply to all greases out there. Speaking of grease out there, how many of you have grease coming out the side of your bearings like this? Over-lubrication of anti-friction bearings can in many cases be worse than under-lubrication. Once you fill a bearing too full of grease and damage the seals or shields, you have destroyed over 80% of the life of the bearing, and you have no choice but to continue to over-lubricate in order to flush contaminants from the bearing. This problem of having grease running down the outside of a bearing can be particularly problematic in a food plant or a washdown type of environment. Here's how it normally starts. Management claims that the mechanic, oiler, or operator isn't doing the lubrication correctly because they can't see grease coming out the bearing like in the picture. The person who just got yelled at then makes sure that there is evidence that they were there the next time they go back with a grease gun, and in overfilling the bearing, damages the seals. Great. Now there's a messy bearing out on the production floor. Now the person who does the washdown spends a little extra time with a high-pressure hose full of water and chemicals cleaning off this bearing, which pumps caustic chemicals and water into the bearing with damaged seals. And when a company starts losing bearings to corrosion like this, the first instinct is to increase the amount of lubrication these bearings get. While I'm on this topic, you do not want to purge water from bearings by over-lubricating if you are going to damage the seals. Instead, turn the machinery on and let centrifugal force do the work. So how much grease should you use? While there are always some exceptions, in general, no anti-friction bearing should ever be more than 50% full, and closer to 1/3 full if the bearing can be considered high speed. There are only a few times when you would consider filling a bearing full of grease. Plain bearings and bushings cannot be over-lubricated because they have a way of purging the excess grease, but you can create a housekeeping mess and waste grease if you pump a bushing full of grease until you see new grease coming out, as opposed to using just enough to reestablish a seal. I've tried to avoid math and chemistry for the most part, but if you wanted those formulas, here they are. Keep in mind that the output of each grease gun needs to be measured. You are also generally better off coming back more often with less grease. That is the principle that automatic lubricators work on. And if you didn't already know, if you have two identical bearings, but one is mounted on a vertical shaft, you need to make sure to lubricate this bearing twice as often due to the effects of gravity. Motor lubrication is one area where less is often more. Too many people over-lubricate their electric motors. Older motors used lithium-based greases, while newer motors today utilize polyurea-based greases. The base oil for both is usually around 500 SUS, although heavier oils may be used in motors that run hotter. When you over-lubricate your motor, you pump the excess grease into the windings, eventually killing the motor. There are charts available detailing how often you should lubricate your motors based on ambient conditions, as well as the amount of grease to add based on frame size. Most of these charts are fairly consistent, but one thing nobody can agree upon is how to actually do the lubrication. How many of you think we should do it while it's running? How many of you think we should do the lubrication while the motor is stopped? Well, half of you are right, and so are the other half of you. When polled, the motor OEMs were evenly split on whether or not to lubricate a motor while running. There are advantages and disadvantages to each. The first thing to keep in mind is that if you can't do it safely while running, which many people cannot, go ahead and lock it out and tag it out properly. Motors have a funny way of starting all on their own otherwise. Either way, you should remove the vent plug if the motor has one. It should be on the underside opposite the Zerk fitting. Next step, clean off the Zerk fitting before putting in the new grease. You should actually be doing this on every bearing you lubricate. You don't want to grease a motor twice a year and pump whatever dirt is on that fitting right into the bearing. Next, lubricate the bearing using the proper amount and type of grease. You can then put the motor back into service. The motor will expel any grease it doesn't need through the vent plug. Once this has happened, you can replace the vent plug or even install pressure relief fitting if you want. That's the most basic way of lubricating an electric motor bearing. Excessive grease or too heavy of a base oil can result in skidding inside the bearing, where the rolling element skids instead of rolls. This puts a flat spot on the race of the bearing, a flat spot that gets hit quite often with 10 to 20 rolling elements doing 1800 or 3600 RPMs. When this happens, the motor gets noisy, and we all know what happens to a noisy motor. Somebody will want to give it even more grease, and eventually you end up with a motor full of grease like the one I showed you earlier. We've discussed synthetic products several times, and every time I do this seminar in person, people ask me about synthetic lubricants. Having a synthetic oil or a synthetic base oil in your grease is what makes it synthetic. The most common synthetics are polyalpha olefins, or PAOs. You can find these in motor oils, air compressors, and most synthetic gearbox lubricants. You may also see some ester-based products, particularly in high-temperature chain applications, and polyalkylene glycols, or PAGs, are gaining popularity as lubricants for enclosed gearboxes. Each kind of synthetic has their own advantages, and synthetics in general have some advantages over mineral oil-based products, such as better high and low temperature performance for outdoor or extreme temperature applications, higher flash and fire points, increased drain intervals, and better overall performance in terms of reducing friction. What this means is that you can use a lubricant that lasts longer, runs better, and is sometimes safer. You also get the added benefits of consolidation and the lower inventory and disposal amounts, not to mention the labor costs associated with oil changes. These benefits usually outweigh the higher initial purchase price of a synthetic lubricant. Many customers have started color coding their machinery and storage containers. You can create charts or machinery tags to differentiate between oil types, and you can even purchase clear grease guns through your power transmission providers. Lubricant color coding and machinery tagging can be helpful if you have any type of auditing program such as a HACCP plan or want to avoid potential compatibility problems. Lubriplate offers color-coded machinery tags for our products at no charge. All you have to do is attach them to your machinery. If you aren't considering using a synthetic lubricant or are just interested in upgrading your predictive maintenance program, I highly recommend using oil analysis as a part of your program. Lubriplate offers free standard oil analysis on all of our products. One thing to keep in mind is that the quality of both the sample and the paperwork will impact the effectiveness of the program. In general, you should make sure that the sample is representative of the oil in service and that the paperwork is completely filled out, no matter whose service you use. Every week, we receive samples with no paperwork whatsoever, which helps no one. The more information you give us, the better the program works. If you have any questions about your specific applications, need to find an authorized distributor in your area, or would like to contact your local Lubriplate district manager for more information, you can locate them on this chart or find us on the internet at www.lubriplate.com. You can also find our data sheets and MSDS sheets on our website. Thank you for choosing Lubriplate Lubricants.
Any questions? Any answers? Oil analysis. Packing slip, very important, okay? There's a barcode on here, you put right on the sample itself. When they get this, they match the sample to the barcode that's on this, okay? We give you, we do a or they do a spectroanalysis. This is now, this used to be done in our own lab in Toledo, Ohio, until customers accused us of rigging the test results so the customer would order new oil. It's now done by Polaris Labs, okay? There's several different addresses here depending on where you're located in the country. Your closest here would be Indianapolis, but it's a third-party analysis. We have nothing to do with that, okay? Now, we still have our own lab, so let's say one of you guys or gals go into a customer and they say, I got this gearbox, I don't know what oil's in it. Get a sample of it. We can still send it to Ed Blank. I don't know if anybody remembers Ed, but he's in our lab in Toledo. He can look at the oil and tell you what it is, and we can make a recommendation from that. So we still do our own lab.
So essentially that test will that give like a number or a range of how much life is left? Like
Yes. Yep. There's a number chart that you'll get on the result, 1 through 5. 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. Okay. It might indicate it has contamination like water or metal fines or something like that.
They'll give you a complete report back.
and this isn't limited to is that limited to only Lubriplate lubricants?
Yes, for us.
Okay.
Yes, for us. Yes.
And
then you get a-
bottles too, yeah.
You get a bottle within a bottle. Put the oil in this. Always try to get this as full as possible. Okay, as much as we can to do the analysis. And then you put it in this. Put your barcode on there. Fill this out and send it to Polaris. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, it's still old fashioned.